It's been a while since we've seen a proper small form performance laptop on the market. Razer and MSI tried recently by sticking a GTX 1650 GPU inside the 13 and 14-inch chassis, but paired with Core processors and questionable thermals, those products haven't been as well received as their manufacturers were expecting. And that brings us to the laptop that we have here, the Asus ROG Zephyrus G14. It's a joint effort from Asus, AMD and Nvidia and brings up a competent Ryzen 4000 platform and up to Nvidia RTX 2060 graphics inside a compact premium chassis without compromising on ergonomics, battery life or screen quality. Does it sound perhaps too good to be true? Well, it's not for the most part. We've spent the last few weeks with the Zephyrus and gathered all our thoughts in this video with the solid traits and the quirks, so stick along if this notebook is on your shopping list. In all fairness, the G14 is not as small, as thin or as light as those gaming ultrabooks mentioned earlier, but it's portable enough for me, and you can tell its size from the small bezels around the screen. The whole thing also weighs 1.6 to 1.7 kilos between the different versions. The slightly heavier variants get what Asus calls the Anime Matrix secondary display, an array of dots on the lid cover that can display various messages, photos and animations in a geeky way. Our sample is pre-production and something about this matrix array did not work properly on it, so we're not going to get in depth here, but you'll find plenty of details in other videos. For what is worth, I for one don't even care much about this feature anyway, and I'd rather get one of the standard configurations of the G14 without the anime array, which are slightly thinner and lighter at 1.6 kilos. This aside, the G14 is surprisingly well made for a Zephyrus G given our experience with last year's G15. The two have very little in common, as this is entirely made out of magnesium and aluminum alloys, feels premium to the touch and is also built like a mini tank. And I'm not kidding, this chassis barely budges when pressed harder, and the screen is also well made. Asus offered the G14 in two color versions, a darker model called Space Gray, the one we have here, and a brighter variant called Mirage White. The latter does a better job at hiding smudges and would be normally the one I'd prefer, except that it comes with a silver keyboard with white lighting. That's poor contrast. Furthermore, the interior doesn't show a lot of finger roll on this space gray model either, but the top does, as that's made out of aluminum. Looks aside, the Zephyrus checks most of the ergonomic aspects I'd want in a modern laptop. The front and lip corners are blunted and friendly to the wrist, the screen can be easily raised and adjusted with a single hand, and grippy rubber feet keep this nicely anchored on the desk. However, there's no notch or recess on the front lip, so you'll struggle a bit to catch on the screen and lift it up. In fact, you might need to use a fingernail or both hands for it. And while we're nitpicking, I would have liked a screen that goes all the way back flat, as well as have those status LEDs pushed on the side and out of the way, instead of having them underneath the screen. The power button is new though, it's no longer lit up and integrates a smart finger sensor, the kind that registers your fingerprint from the moment you press it and power the laptop, and then uses it to log into Windows without prompting for another swipe. Oh, and you might have noticed those cuts on the palm rest. They hide speakers underneath, as the G14 now gets quad speakers, with two of them firing upwards through these cuts and two more firing downwards. The audio is surprisingly loud and punchy for a small laptop, and the quality is definitely not bad either. Finally, as far as the I/O goes, the ports are lined on the sides towards the front of the laptop, as the rear is reserved for the complex thermal design required to cool the hardware in this small chassis. That means the PSU is placed in the middle of the left side, somewhat annoying. This configuration charges with a 180W compact power brick, but it also supports USB-C charging up to 65W through the USB-C port on the left side. That means you don't have to carry around the larger brick to work or school, and only grab it when you plan to run games or demanding loads. Asus implemented their ergolift hinge design on this laptop, which we've seen on many of their ZenBooks in recent years. That raises the main body on rubber feet placed at the bottom of the screen, creating a slightly inclined typing position and extra space underneath, which helps draw fresh air easier into the cooling system. There's normally one issue with this design though, as the hot air exhausts are placed between the hinges, and that means hot air is pushed straight into the screen with most of the other ergolift models. Not here though. First off, the thermal design splits the hot air coming out, sending part of it to the sides, part of it downwards, and only some of it upwards. And then the upward stream is further diverted to the sides and not into the screen by these small fins that you can hopefully see here. I found this to be a smart approach back when I was first introduced to it, but I was curious if it actually made any difference in real life, and it does. While the components and chassis get hot with demanding games, the actual screen does not. That chin at the bottom of the panel plays a role in this whole thing as well, as it slightly raises the display and pushes it away from the exhaust. Speaking of the screen, Asus offers two panel options for the Zephyrus G14, either IPS Full HD 120Hz or IPS QHD 60Hz. We have the latter here. It's a pretty nice display overall. However, we only measured about 250 nits of max brightness on our sample, which is fine for indoors use but won't suffice for brighter environments. That's compensated by contrast levels of about 1000 to 1, 70% plus coverage of the Adobe RGB gamut and good uniformity without any light bleeding. So this panel is well suited for daily use, for video and even for some photo editing, as long as you keep the laptop indoors. However, it's not that great for games, especially the fast-paced kind, as it's merely a 60Hz panel with middling response times. Thus, if gaming sits high on your list of priorities, I'd recommend the 130Hz panels instead. We haven't yet tested that one, but we will in the near future, and we'll post a comparison between the two options in our detailed review available on the site on ultrabookreview.com. It's linked in the description. As for the keyboard, this might well be my favorite typer of the entire ROG Zephyrus lineup, and that's something given that the 15-inch models include some great keyboards as well. This is in fact very similar to the keyboard on the GX502, with a full deck of main keys and small but nicely spaced out arrows. It lacks that extra row of function keys at the right, as there was no room for it on the smaller chassis. The feedback is somehow better though, crisp and responsive. I got used to it very quickly and was able to type faster and more accurately than on most other laptops I've tried recently. The keys are also fairly quiet. What this implementation lacks is RGB backlighting though, as Asus only put white LEDs beneath the keys. I don't mind this much, but some of you might. Oh, and these white LEDs will prove annoying on the silver keys implemented in the Mirage White version of this laptop, making the writing difficult to read. Okay, so with those out of the way, let's talk specs and performance. Our G14 is one of the higher available configurations, with the AMD Ryzen 7 4800HS processor, 16GB of RAM, 1TB of storage and dual graphics, with the NVIDIA RTX 2060 65W GPU and the Vega 7 iGPU embedded within the AMD platform, which takes over with lighter use. Asus also offers the G14 with the Ryzen 9 4900HS processor in some regions, but keep in mind that the 7 and the 9 are both 8-core 16-thread processor with similar traits, just slightly faster clocks and improved integrated graphics for the 9. Both of these HS APUs are pretty much the best AMD have to offer these days and stand for power-optimized versions of the more common Ryzen H processors available in larger laptops. They are designed to run at 35W and offer nearly the same performance as those 45W variants, making them well suited for ultra-portables such as this one. And boy does the 4800HS in this laptop perform well. It pretty much smokes the Intel Core U competition in any kind of demanding load, actually scoring at about the same levels as an i9-9880H full power processor in our tests. We've run a handful of benchmarks and games on this system. Some of our findings are included in the video, and you should pause if you need to look at the data more closely, but the more in-depth analysis and performance logs are available on our site on ultrabookreview.com. The link for the review is in the description down below. I have to mention that Asus offers 3 power profiles for this laptop in the Armoury Crate tab. Silent favors low noise and limits the CPU and GPU, so it's best suited for light use and video. Performance is a balanced profile with stock CPU-GPU settings meant for multitasking and some light gaming, while Turbo overclocks the GPU and increases the CPU's power allocation to around 42W. This is meant for demanding loads and gaming. As far as gaming goes, the RTX 2060 in this G14 is a Max-Q 65W variant, so not the full power version you can get with 15-inch ultra portables, but at the same time the fastest GPU available in a 14-inch chassis these days. These tables and graphs show how our configuration scored in several different games, as well as offer a comparison with a few other gaming ultrabooks that you might be inclined to consider alongside this Zephyrus G14. Again, we can only include so much data in the video, and the more detailed analysis and the performance logs that look at speeds and temperatures and differences between the available power profiles are available in the written review. I do have to mention here that while this G14 is a solid performer across the board, it also runs hot. Yes, Asus put a lot of effort into the thermal design as explained earlier, as you can see here, with a complex array of fans and heat pipes used to cool the components. But nonetheless, like on most other gaming ultra portables, there's no way around physics with this one either. Cramming powerful specs inside a compact chassis leads to high temperatures and noisy fans. The CPU consistently averages temperatures in the mid-90s with games, while the GPU settles for low 80s in most titles, and part of this heat spreads onto the metallic chassis. We measure temperatures in the mid-50s on the inner deck, above the keyboard, high 40s in the keyboard area around the WASD keys, and mid-50s on the underbelly around the exhaust. All this on the turbo profile, with the fans ramping up to about 45 to 46 dB at head level. You can also opt to play games on the performance and silent profiles. Silent is especially interesting as it tames down the fan to about 39 to 40 dB, but it throttles the CPU and takes a toll on the FPS count, so it's only an option for less demanding or older titles. Otherwise, if you're looking to cover up those fans, just hook up a pair of good headphones. But the Zephyrus G14 is not just a performance laptop, it can also handle everyday multitasking, browsing and video, this time around running quietly and coolly. Unfortunately, I can't tell you much about the battery life here, as our pre-production unit did not properly deactivate the NVIDIA GPU, and that took a hit on the results. We've asked for another sample and we'll update this section in the review. Nonetheless, I'm expecting about 3 to 4 hours of daily multitasking and 7 to 8 hours of video from the 76 Wh battery inside. Okay, so before we wrap this up, we also need to talk about value here. The G14 is not yet listed in the US at the time of this video, but it is listed for pre-order in the UK at £15.99 for the top tier configuration we have here, or as low as £9.99 for the entry-level variant. Just keep in mind you'll have to upgrade the RAM on that one, as single channel RAM takes a toll on the gaming performance. Still, £15.99 puts this a little above ultra portables such as the MSI Prestige 14 or the Razer Blade Stealth, and a little under RTX 2060 configurations of 15-inch ultra portables such as the MSI GS66 Stealth or the Asus ROG Zephyrus M. So that's competitive for what this G14 is, and I can only hope this sort of pricing will also carry on to the US and other markets as well. We'll update on this in the article once we know more. Okay, so let's cut this short here. In conclusion, this Zephyrus G14 might not be for everyone, but sure is one of the nicest performance ultra portables out there. Asus checked pretty much all of the important aspects with this product, from the performance to the build quality to the typing experience and features. The higher temperatures in demanding loads and perhaps the screen or configuration options might put some of you towards the 15-inch lineups, and I can understand why. But if portability matters enough for you to compensate for these aspects, there's no other notebook like this Zephyrus G14 out there right now, and it might not be for a while. So that's about it for this review. Let me know what you think about this Asus Zephyrus in the comment section down below, hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed the video and subscribe for more of our content. See you in the next one.